Mr. Speaker.
Order. Questions for oral answer. Dr. Tan Wu-Ming.
Question 1, please.
Mr. Speaker, may I have your permission to answer questions 1 through to 10 as part of a ministerial statement delivered on behalf of the Minister for Health later in this sitting?
Please do.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Liang Yinghua.
Question 11, sir.
Mr. Speaker, may I have your permission to answer PQs 11 to 30, as well as PQs by Dr. Lim Wee Kiak, Mr. Desmond Chu, Mr. Lim Biao Chuan, and Mr. Alex Yam that have been scheduled for a subsequent sitting?
Please do.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the global energy market is facing a conflation of 4 shocks. First, an unexpected surge in demand as economies begin to recover following the easing of COVID-19 restrictions. Second, unusual weather events have impacted the generation of wind and solar power in Europe. Third, lower than expected coal production, notably in China. And fourth, a series of gas production outages around the world. The shocks have been most intensely manifested in the market for natural gas, which is a fallback fuel for electricity generation in many, many countries. As a result, spot gas prices have risen by around 5 times since March 2021. Now, many major economies across Europe and Asia have low inventory levels, and they are moving quickly to secure sufficient fuel supplies for the winter. These have compounded the impact on prices of fuel and electricity around the world. Now, members of this House are understandably concerned. We have received 28 parliamentary questions on energy-related matters. Let me bucket them into 3 groups. The first group I will address is on energy security. Second group on electricity retailers, and last but not least, electricity prices. First, on energy security. Singapore relies on imported natural gas for almost all our electricity production, and is therefore very highly exposed to global supply and demand shocks. Over the years, we have put in place measures to secure Singapore's access to fuel supplies. Since 1999, we have had long-term supply contracts for piped natural gas, or PNG, from Malaysia and Indonesia. Negotiations to renew some of these contracts are ongoing. By and large, the supply of PNG has been relatively stable. However, due to an incident at the upstream gas production facility in July this year, the West Natuna's gas supply to Singapore has been affected, resulting in a fall in overall gas supply by about 3% since September 2021. This is likely to last until the end of 2021 as the facility undergoes repair and upgrading. Gas pressure of the supply from South Sumatra has also been affected due to higher demand from gas users upstream. EMA, the Energy Market Authority of Singapore, is working with the gas importers to stabilize PNG supply. In 2013, we supplemented PNG with liquefied natural gas, or LNG, by building an LNG terminal. This allows us to tap gas sources further afield and is part and parcel of our diversification strategy. The LNG terminal has sufficient capacity to meet all of Singapore's gas needs should PNG be unavailable. Earlier this year, EMA also appointed two new term LNG importers, bringing the total of term LNG importers in Singapore to 4. Gas users in Singapore now have more options to procure the gas that they require. We also require power generation companies, or GenCos, to stockpile at least 60 days of fuel reserves in the event of disruptions to our natural gas supply. The stockpile remains intact. In addition, EMA ensures that there is sufficient generation capacity to convert the fuel to electricity. Taking into account planned and unplanned outages, we need to maintain spare generation capacity or reserve margin of at least 27% above peak electricity demand. Today, the reserve margin stands at 52%. It is still significantly above the 27%. Over the last 10 years, the excess capacity had been higher, mainly due to overinvestment by private GenCos in the early 2010s. Going forward, we cannot always assume that the private sector will put in sufficient investments to build new generation capacity, even as the margin narrows over time. Now, I'll touch on how we intend to address this through the energy resilience measures and miscellaneous amendments bill tomorrow. In short, we have sufficient fuel supplies and generation capacity today. However, given the unprecedented scale of this energy crunch, we are leaving nothing to chance. EMA has been working closely with industry stakeholders on preemptive measures to further secure Singapore's fuel and electricity supply and ensure our energy resilience and reliability. First, we have established standby fuel facilities which GenCos can draw upon if needed to generate electricity. This will bolster the GenCos reserves. Second, to complement the standby fuel facilities, EMA has informed GenCos to contract sufficient fuel to meet at least their customers' demands. Third, in the extreme event that GenCos are not willing to draw on gas reserves to generate electricity, perhaps could be due to risk aversion, EMA will engage the GenCos directly to generate electricity using fuel from the standby facilities. Details of these measures are in EMA's press release on the 19th of October 2021. Members of the House, these preemptive measures are extraordinary, but they are also necessary to secure our fuel and our electricity supply during this extraordinary period. EMA will review if these measures are still needed by the 31st of March 2022. Mr. Speaker, sir, over the longer term, we will continue to diversify our energy sources where possible. We have announced that we will quadruple our solar deployment by 2030 to generate at least 2 gigawatt peak of electricity. We also announced last week that we will be importing up to 4 gigawatt of low-carbon electricity by 2035. While this was primarily a move to decarbonize the power system, it will also reduce our resilience and our reliance, not resilience. It will also reduce our reliance on natural gas. Beyond this, we will continue to explore other low-carbon alternatives like hydrogen as well as geothermal energy. Collectively, these measures will make our power system more resilient and less susceptible to price and supply risks. On electricity retailers, I'll now touch on them. Since 2000s, EMA had progressively liberalized the electricity retail market. Electricity retailers buy electricity through the wholesale electricity market, or WEM, to sell to consumers. They were generally able to offer prices which were priced lower than the regulated tariffs in the last few years, because wholesale electricity prices were depressed below the long-run marginal costs due to overcapacity in generation and also due to the oversupply of gas. The Electricity Futures Market, or EFM, set up in April 2015, also enabled retailers to hedge their price risks through electricity futures. Retailers can also offlay their risks to GenCos through financial hedges, such as contracts for differences or CFDs. Now, these have worked well in a stable market environment. With the nationwide launch of the Open Electricity Market, or OEM, in 2018, household consumers were able to benefit from greater choice, competitive pricing, and innovative offers, with no change to the reliability of the electricity supply. However, our market conditions today are significantly more volatile than in 2018. Some market participants, they had not anticipated this, and they were not sufficiently prepared. Over the last 3 weeks, 5 electricity retailers, iSwitch, Ohm Energy, Best Electricity, UGS, Silver Cloud Energy, have announced their plans to leave the market. These 5 retailers supply to about 9% of all electricity consumers. Members are understandably concerned about why retailers are exiting the market. Let me explain. First, several retailers were underhedged when the global energy shocks and disruptions to our piped natural gas, the PNG, supply caused wholesale electricity prices to spike. These retailers now find themselves having to buy the unhedged portion of electricity at the high wholesale electricity prices and sell them at much lower contracted rates to consumers. Second, liquidity in the electricity futures market has also been affected. Given the huge volatility, market makers were not prepared to take on significant positions. This is similar to the situation in other commodity markets. As a result, some electricity retailers are no longer able to sustain their operations in this challenging environment and thus have chosen to exit the market. Mr. Speaker, the entry and exit of retailers are features of an open and competitive retail market. The unusually high number of exits reflects the severity of the global energy shock. We have observed the same phenomenon in other countries, such as in the UK as well as Spain. The key for us is to have a fair and robust system to ensure a smooth transition for customers affected by exiting retailers. Retailers who wish to exit the retail electricity market are required to first approach other retailers to take on these consumers at the same terms and conditions, failing which the consumer will be transferred to SP Group. As of end October 2021, about 140,000 households and 11,000 business accounts will either be transferred to another retailer or back to SP Group. Consumers who are transferred to the SP Group can choose to purchase electricity from another retailer. Security deposits from household consumers are safeguarded and will be refunded after offsetting outstanding charges. Retailers are not allowed to charge customers an early termination fee. There will be no disruption to electricity supply. EMA will direct consumers who wish to seek compensation or file claims under their supply contracts with the retailers to the available channels. Given the current challenging circumstances, EMA is open to allowing retailers facing challenges to suspend their operations by transferring their customers to SP Group while they strengthen their business. In exchange, these retailers commit to provide an ex gratia payment to ease their customers' transition. Best Electric, Ohm Energy, and UGS Energy have joined this arrangement. EMA is working closely with the remaining 9 retailers who are still operating in the OEM, or the open electricity market. EMA is facilitating their efforts to hedge against future price volatility. These include facilitating the sale of electricity future contracts between retailers that are exiting the retail market to those that are staying. EMA is also working closely with SGX to incentivize more market makers to participate in the electricity futures market. Some members of Parliament have asked if SP can continue to honour the prices and terms of the existing contracts that affected customers had contracted with the electricity retailers. The transferred households will need to pay the same regulated tariffs as all the other households and small businesses. This reflects the price SP pays to the GenCos, or the generating companies, for the electricity. Thus, for the transferred customers to pay less, the other consumers with SP will have to pay more than the regulated tariffs to cross-subsidize them. A few members have asked what the recent exit of retailers portend for the OEM. Allow me to make 3 points. First, the benefits of the OEM, or open electricity market, remain. Notwithstanding the recent exits, the OEM has benefited and continues to benefit many Singaporeans. Since it was launched in November 2018, consumers have been able to enjoy increased choice and flexibility when buying electricity, ranging from fixed price plans, discount off tariff or dot plans, or even wholesale electricity price plans. More importantly, consumers who switch to retail price plans have been able to enjoy savings of up to 30% off the regulated tariff. To date, about half of all households, or about 746,000 household accounts, have switched to buying electricity from electricity retailers. Second, the viability of the OEM remains. There are currently 9 remaining retailers in the OEM. Depending on the severity and the duration of this energy crunch, more retailers may either exit or they may re-enter the market. Now, members have asked whether EMA will be reviewing the number of electricity retail licensees needed to sustain the OEM. Mr. Speaker, the answer is that there's really no magic number. There is sufficient competition in the OEM today, and EMA is committed to ensuring this. Last but not least, the foundations of the open electricity market will need to be strengthened. Today, OEM retailers are vetted and have to satisfy a stringent set of requirements before they are licensed to serve OEM consumers. For example, retailers have to demonstrate that their management team possess the relevant experience in energy retailing or trading. They have to consistently hedge at least 50% of their wholesale electricity price risk, and they have to submit financial statements to EMA, which allows EMA to monitor their financial health. On hindsight, these are necessary, but for a severe stress test such as this, the measures were insufficient. This is the current crisis that we are facing today. Some retailers were ill-prepared to weather the storm. Members have raised useful suggestions on how we can further strengthen these requirements and the futures market. We will consider them carefully. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, let me now turn to the third key issue, and that is on electricity prices. I wanted to thank the members for giving us more suggestions. But now on electricity prices.
I thought you were teasing us.
I'm sorry? Yeah. Now, Singapore imports our energy needs and cannot be fully insulated from developments in the global energy market. Most consumers in Singapore have been cushioned somewhat so far. 99% of household consumers are on standard price plans with retailers or the regulated tariff rate, and about 96% of businesses are on fixed price or discount of tariff plans. These have risen by far less than the price of gas or wholesale electricity. However, the sustained high fuel prices will eventually feed into our electricity bills to reflect the cost of electricity production. Many members of this House have asked what the government will be doing to help affected households and businesses. The government will provide focused and targeted assistance to eligible groups of customers, of consumers. Eligible households will continue to receive U-Save rebates to support them with their utility expenses. MTI will also work with MOF to monitor the situation and study whether further assistance is required for affected households and businesses. At the same time, we are also conducting programs to raise awareness of electricity conservation and facilitate efforts by households and businesses to reduce their utility bills. For example, SP Services has been progressively replacing households' analog electricity meters with advanced electricity meters which allow them to track their energy consumption through the SP Utilities mobile app. This will help households better understand their electricity usage patterns and encourage them to be more energy efficient. NEA has also launched other energy-saving initiatives, such as the Climate-Friendly Households Program, to encourage households to switch to more resource-efficient appliances. Eligible households are given vouchers to offset the costs of these appliances. We urge all consumers to use energy prudently and adopt energy conservation as a way of life. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, sir, our energy market has served us well for the last 20 years. Amongst major cities, Our electricity supply is one of the most reliable and price competitive. Our market is now being tested by an unprecedented storm in the global energy market. While most consumers will not see an immediate increase in electricity prices, they may see an increase next year with increasing energy prices globally. Our commitment to this House is this: we will secure our energy supply. We will help vulnerable consumers weather the storm, and we will continue to make our energy sector even better. Thank you, and I look forward to your continued support.
So that's it. Okay. Mr. Liang Eng Hua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to thank the Minister for his reassuring reply on how we're going to deal with the ongoing energy crunch and volatility. So my question is going to be on the electricity retailers. In the light of the current disruptions, and as the Minister said, some retailers are ill-prepared for this current volatility, would the government still recommend consumers to switch to the retail price plan? That's my first question. Second question, while the OEM has indeed brought significant savings to households in the last few years, having discount over the regulated rates and so on, does the government see the need to review this the regime, given the situation that we're facing now? Perhaps to have fewer but stronger and more regulated retailers, or just having one Singapore Power, but offering different price plans so that they can also benefit from the scale efficiency. Thank you.
I thank Member Mr. Liang Eng Hua for his question. The OEM provides choices to consumers. Notwithstanding the recent volatility, electricity retailers continue to offer competitively priced retail price plans to interested consumers. Now, affected consumers who have switched back to the regulated tariffs, they actually still have the option of choosing from other retailers that are able to suit their needs. And we encourage all consumers to study carefully, deliberate over which electricity price plans would best suit their needs. Now, on the viability of the OEM, in my main reply, I think that it still remains, but we will need to continue to explore ways and means to strengthen the foundations. My ministry will study how we can further strengthen the safeguards for the OEM so as to better protect our consumers' interests. Thank you.
Ms. Polisan. I can request members to keep their questions short and no more than 2 SQs, please.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Dr. Tan, for your comprehensive reply. I have one question on if the supply crunch continues to worsen over the next few months in the longer term, then what is MTI's strategy to reduce the national consumption, the demand, especially from an industry sectoral angle? Thank you.
I thank Ms. Po for her question. I think we've been constantly engaging the industry. And earlier on, I've also, I think through the past year itself, I've mentioned that underlying the 4 switches of what we have been preparing for, underlying it is energy conservation. We also want to encourage industry to consider using the energy in a more efficient manner, because obviously there are peak demands and there are off-peak demand, And we hope that the industry will work closely with all of us in making sure that we can space out the peak demand versus the trough. What is important is that as we look at securing our supply, I think it was announced in the 19th October press release by EMA. In terms of the supply, we have sufficient supply. In terms of how we procure the gas prices, we are also looking at means of exploring other longer-term measures. Importing low-carbon electricity, importing from the regional grid is one of this strategy. We are also exploring, that is a much longer-term strategy to reduce our reliance on importation, would be to look at our own solar farm, solar power generation capacity. And at the same time, we are also looking at significant working with academia, the different institutions, as well as industry leaders in how we can access low-carbon hydrogen, carbon capture, utilization, and storage as well. So we have a combination of all these measures to reduce our reliance on any one particular supply of energy. On top of that, we are also exploring the use of energy storage systems in the form of batteries to see how we can provide a more stable power supply to reduce the intermittence from solar energy. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Ms. Jessica Tan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a related supplementary question for Minister in terms of energy stability as well as security. Because today, still 95% of Singapore's electricity comes from natural gas. As Minister talked about the preemptive measures of stockpiling as well as enabling the standby fuel facilities for GenCos to be able to use this capacity. From the high prices that we've seen for natural gas, how sustainable is this measure? I know that it sounds like supply is sufficient, but how sustainable is this given the consumption and the heavy reliance on electricity? At the same time, my second SQ is on the status of the GenCo supply and generation capacity. Does EMA monitor this? And what is the current status of this capacity as well as their supply?
I thank Ms. Jessica Tan for her question. All generation companies they will need to comply with our requirements to have fuel stockpile that will last at least 60 days of operation. Now, generation companies should utilize their own fuel supply to meet electricity demand and only tap on the standby fuel facilities when needed. The standby fuel facilities are necessary to ensure we have sufficient fuel in Singapore to meet our electricity demand. Hence, we took that preemptive step in mid-October to secure this. Now, EMA will continue to review the need to maintain this facility once the global energy situation stabilizes. So to reassure Ms. Jessica Tan and members of the House, our generation capacity is sufficient. Thank you.
Ms. Fumiha.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister has noted that the regulatory requirements for open electricity market OEM are probably inadequate to withstand a severe stress situation such as the current one. He identified four key things as culminating to a perfect storm. I'd like to ask Minister 2SQ first, how will the government address the vulnerability of the current regulatory framework for the long-term sustainability of the OEM? I guess this was designed, we didn't expect this perfect storm. So specifically, what's the time frame you will be rolling out a new enhanced framework? Anything on the hedging strategy, anything about the financial strength of these OEMs? Second question is whether the government will consider, in the meantime, special support to the remaining electricity retailers for their continued operations and also, most importantly, their commitments to the consumers, right? So those who are still surviving, including how is SP going to manage the influx of the new customers which it will now have to serve. So thank you.
I thank the member, Ms. Fu, for her very pertinent questions. Now, indeed, there's a cost to regulation, and this cost ultimately will be borne by consumers. If the requirements are too onerous, then fewer retailers may be willing to participate in the market, and therefore, if there are fewer retailers, there will be less choice, and there will be less competitive plans for consumers. Prior to the current energy crunch, our prudential requirements were largely adequate. We put in place safeguards to protect consumer interests, such as safeguarding the deposits of households and also the minimum hedging requirements at 50%. In addition, retailers and their shareholders know that if they should exit without regard for their customers' interests, they may not be granted retail licenses henceforth. Thus, over the last decade, up to 2020, only 5 other retailers have left the market, and many of them cited the intense market competition as the main reason for their exit. This demonstrates that our safeguards in the past would have probably sufficed, not just in our market, but in most market conditions. This episode, this unprecedented crisis, has highlighted some learning points for us. EMA will enhance the licensing requirements for the OEM retailers and strengthen protection even more for consumers moving forward. However, we have to be also practical and realistic when instituting safeguards, because it would be neither feasible nor economically prudent for us to institute safeguards that can cover every potential possible eventuality. I think doing so would lead to significant costs for consumers. On the measures that SP is taking to manage the influx of new consumers which it must now serve, the objective of shifting consumers back to SP is to ensure that there's no break in electricity provision. SP has put in place measures to make the transition for affected customers and consumers as seamless as possible. This transition back to SP is fully automated, and affected consumers do not have to take any action. SP will also follow up with consumers post that transition with an email or letter notification informing them of the transfer. Affected consumers who wish to remain with SP do not need to take any further action. Consumers are also free to switch out to other retailers thereafter. Thank you.
Mr. Willem.
Thank you, Speaker. I have one supplementary question for Minister concerning whether he has any interim data to share on the customers who have been affected by the exit of the independent retailers. What I mean is, since the exit of iSwitch and others, their customers would have to make certain decisions. From those announcements to now, can Minister share whether most customers who are displaced have decided to stay with SP for the time being, or have they switched to the larger retailers who are also generators called gen tailers, or have they actually taken the plunge to go with another independent retailer? I wonder if he has that data. Thank you.
Well, I thank Ms. Sylvia for her question. I think the short answer is that I don't have the data currently because it's happened quite recently. But I think we will monitor the suggestion, her question as posed. In fact, we have every intention to do so. And perhaps at a subsequent sitting, if she can file another PQ, we'll be quite happy to update her. Thank you.
Mr. Alex Yam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A related question. Under the Code of Conduct for Retail Electricity Licensees, retailers are required to approach other retailers to attempt to novate their customers on the same contractual terms. I hear from the previous answer to the Honourable Sylvia Lim that you don't have the current numbers on how many would possibly be able to novate. But a follow-up question is, how would the regulator, EMA in this case, ensure that the code is adhered to by those retailers who are exiting the market, so that these negotiations do carry on and benefit the end consumer? The next is related to the ex-gratia payment that Minister had mentioned, and it's also in the EMA press release. Details are a bit scant on this. How would the retailers be getting in touch with their customers in terms of possible ex-gratia payments to ease the transition? Those are my two questions.
I thank Mr. Alex Yam for his two questions. I think in part of my earlier reply, the retailers will work with EMA, and they will, of course, work with other retailers. And as a last resort, where SP comes in to take over that in the form of a regulated tariff, that would be, that there's a sequence and a mechanism to it. Suffice to say today that what EMA will do is that they will continually work with existing retailers to ensure that that transfer is seamless, and to also ensure that there's a fair code of practice being adhered to. I think thus far, the novation has happened fairly seamlessly. There are existing retailers that are still in the business, and I think that everyone is watching the situation quite carefully as well. So the storm continues to evolve. I think the stability that we have provided is that very preemptive move to make sure that the supplies has been fortified, and we have actually sort of make sure that that supply of gas for the generation of electricity is actually ensured, so that our reliability and our resilience is actually preserved. Tomorrow, I will be also putting up a bill on the energy resilience and the transition bill itself. I think we probably will have more points put in there to ensure that our resilience continues to be reinforced. Thank you.
Edward Shah.
Thank you, Speaker. I would like to ask the Minister if there are instances where OEM retailers elected to pre-terminate contracts despite partially hedging purchase prices, and I think Minister mentioned 50%, and by doing so walk away with a larger windfall by selling the hedge prices in the current wholesale market at the expense of consumers? And if so, what powers does EMA have to ensure consumers are fairly treated? Thank you.
I thank Mr. Chia for his question. Now, thus far, EMA has not received any complaints from consumers about the OEM retailers pre-terminating their contracts. I would like to assure this House that in awarding a retail electricity license, as I've alluded to earlier on, EMA will first need to be assured that the licensee has the requisite management experience and track record in electricity retailing, and they're not some fly-by-night companies out to make a quick buck and walk away when the prices of electricity or prices move against them. This applies even to the retailers that have already exited. This round, the crisis was unprecedented, and there are significant challenges to retailers because they were not sufficiently hedged. Now, while they may have some existing hedges which can be unwound, but some of the retailers have suffered significant losses this round over the last few months because the hedging is, I think we require them to maintain at least 50% hedge. So because they were not fully hedged, therefore that swing, that huge volatility swing has resulted in them suffering significant losses. We will, from this particular episode itself, ostensibly we cannot possibly predict and preempt every single episode, as I've shared earlier on in my answer to Ms. Fu's PQ. If we cover every single instance of volatility up to the different standard deviation, it would be very, very costly for us and not tenable. But we will make use of this opportunity to learn from it and also study how we can further strengthen and tighten it. I hope that gives the member the reassurance. Thank you.
Mr. Jarogiam.
So I've got two PQs, one on energy security and another on electricity prices. How much leverage does EMA have over foreign gas suppliers to ensure that disruptions and low pressure do not become a regular occurrence, for example, through the imposition of liquidated damages? And have these levers been exercised so far? Secondly, a larger proportion of customers who never switched electricity retailers are from the lower income households, about 79% of 1 to 2 room households versus just 40% of landed property households. This is from data from a PQ I asked in January. This means that the lower income group has been paying elevated regulated tariff prices for several months already. Will the government consider a special one-off additional electricity rebate to assist these lower income households during this difficult period?
I thank Mr. Giang for his questions. I think let me try and answer his second question first. I think for the lower income households, we have the vouchers, the USAVE rebates, which effectively helps them in terms of the utility bills. I think I've shared also in my earlier, either during COS 2021 or in some of my earlier parliamentary speeches itself, that for the up to the 4-room HDB flat and for the 3-room HDB flat, the rebates amount to about 6 months of rebates per year, and I think some 4 months per year. So the low-income households are the ones that we are also very, very concerned about. Now, notwithstanding the rebates that we have already been, in existence itself, we are also exploring further means to help with MOF. I'm not at liberty at this particular point in time to release further details yet, because obviously we're still working out the details with MOF itself. So to summarize, the low-income household, they get a higher proportion of the USAVE vouchers compared to other types of households. Now, in terms of the global gas situation, you asked about what kind of leverage that we have. There are contractual obligations if they are not able to supply the agreed amount of gas, there are compensation benchmarks. In terms of other negotiations as to how we talk to other suppliers and so on, I think because it compromises our energy security and it also compromises our negotiation powers, I think that at this particular point in time, I'm not at liberty to share them, and I hope you understand. Thank you.
Mr. Saktiandi Supat.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I thank the Minister for his answers earlier. I got two supplementary questions. First is, Minister mentioned just now about trying to enhance consumers' reduction of their energy consumption to manage their costs. But while also allowing us to achieve our climate goals, what more can the Ministry do to enhance this even further in terms of letting consumers manage their costs through reduced energy consumption? Second question is related to what Member Gerald asked. I'm very concerned about the affordability of electricity prices. Consumers can no longer enjoy the very competitive prices under OEM compared to the regulated tariff. So the question is, in a worst-case scenario of retailers falling to zero, I think we don't want that to happen, but if it falls to zero from 9 currently, do we have to go to use-save rebates for vulnerable families going forward many times, because given the volatility of the markets, and if it's triggered, what more can we do to other groups rather than just vulnerable groups? Are there certain segments that we can help to help beyond the vulnerable segments to weather the storm? Thanks, Minister.
I thank Mr. Saktiandi for his question. The regulated tariffs reflects the long-run marginal cost of generating electricity. Now, for a period of time, the retailers, the electricity retailers, were generally able to offer prices lower than the regulated tariff because the wholesale electricity prices were depressed below cost due to the overcapacity in generation and oversupply of gas. And I think I did intimate to members of the House, not intimate, in fact, I gave a very strong point earlier this year that low prices is not sustainable and that it will go. And what we can try to do, very, very hard is to try to mitigate and manage the gradient of that growth. I think because we import all of our electricity, 95% of our electricity, more than that, is through natural gas, which is important. And even if we do go into low-carbon electricity, we will still have to import because geographically we are naturally disadvantaged. Even if I were to cover all the rooftops of the HDB flats, the GTC buildings with solar panels, we use vertical solar panels today, I think chances are that, and we cover our floating reservoirs, all the vast expanse of space, we probably can generate maybe at peak, well, not at peak, but probably between 4 to 5% or 6% of our needs. So we still have to import the rest of it. So I think to your point about how do we, I mean, the way I have underscored it is really about energy conservation. The government will continue to support the low-income households through all these vouchers and rebates and so on. But I think whether we like it or not, as that demand-supply situation continues to tighten, the gap between the open electricity market and the regulated tariffs will continue to narrow. The OEM is not just simply about offering our consumers a discount off regulated tariffs. It actually, more pertinently, it offers a variety of fixed price plans and variable price plans to our consumers so that they can select the plan that best suits their needs. Probably we all need to, in fact, the only sustainable way looking forward, and one of those things that I've been preaching constantly is that we would strongly encourage all Singaporeans to adopt energy conservation. as our way of life. We can start small. We can turn the lights off when we're not in the room. We can opt to use the fan more often rather than using air conditioning. We can, in rooms, air-conditioned rooms, we can push the temperature up by a few degrees. We don't have to bring it down so low and then we all wear a sweater. And switching to more energy-efficient appliances where possible. And I think that NEA has worked very well with us to put the ticks in terms of some of these appliances. I think Min Graceful is here. I think the more ticks, the more efficient the appliances in terms of conservation of energy. So I hope that with every single bit we can all come together and help, because we are also committed to a low carbon footprint moving forward. I think you have read in the news today about what's happening in Glasgow at COP26 and how this global warming is going to create catastrophic, disastrous consequences for us if we don't lower our carbon emission. So I hope that with that collective effort, we can all come together and make this a greener and a lower energy requiring environment to live in. Thank you.